Welcome, everybody, to the Proactive Adventure Health and Wellness Podcast. Today, I'm very happy to be here with the founder and race director of Sassquad Trail Running, Kim Levinsky. Kim, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Joe. Glad to be here. It's going to be a good time.
Absolutely. Now, I just met you recently, and it was a funny story about how we met, because although you were on my radar, you and Sassquad on my radar for years, since back in 2018 when I started Proactive. And you started Sassquad in about 2018, right? At the same time?
Yes. Yep, same time.
On my radar this whole time, but I had not met you until recently at the Proactive Barbecue. In a funny way, because Vanessa from my group started training with other people for the Breakneck Marathon, which kind of created this web where finally you were at the Proactive Barbecue, and it was just so nice that you stopped by to visit.
Oh, it was awesome. Yeah, I finally got to meet you and a number of other people who just kind of interacted on social media. So I finally got to meet in person. So that was cool. It was actually my first time to Fawnstock. I've only run through there on the AT, but I hadn't checked out, like, that whole picnic area was gorgeous over by the lake. It was really nice.
It was really perfect for what we were doing. Absolutely great. I checked out some of the local, the trails that were nearby. It was really a really nice park. And it's nice to know that I have a big park somewhere that I can still explore that I haven't done yet. That's always nice. And now, so over the past few weeks, I've listened to a number of your podcasts, because you are all over all different types of podcasts. So unlike most of my previous guests, I've gotten a lot of information already about you. And so I'm going to try to take this conversation in some different directions. And my first question is usually, were you an athlete as a child or when you were younger? And I found out you were a softball coach later on. And so I assume that you were an athlete. Can you tell me what sports you played, or what did you do athletically when you were younger?
Yeah, I grew up playing all different sports. Parents were really encouraging just to be active. And this was before all the child specialization that's going on now, where kids only play one sport. So yeah, I ended up landing on basketball and softball. I played both sports in college at a Division III school. And then it was after that I went to grad school as a grad assistant, coaching softball and doing school. And that's when I got into running there. But up to that point, did not like running.
It seems like that's a funny thing, because a few people I have asked on previous podcasts, Kevin Rader most recently, it seems to be a trend that people do play sports, but they're not interested in the running aspect of it at all until later on, I think, when the sport is over and running kind of vacuums up that air,
Yeah, I mean, running with team sports was always kind of, you get in trouble, then you got to go run sprints, So it wasn't until kind of the structure of college athletics was out of the picture that I was kind of like, oh, now what do you do now? So that's when I got into the wacky world of running.
And you grew up in Ohio, is that right?
I grew up in northern New Jersey, around the Essex County area, and then went to college in Massachusetts. And then the grad school softball coaching was in the middle of nowhere, Ohio. So I lived there for 6 years and then moved back to Jersey in 2016.
So when you were in New Jersey when you were younger, do you have any early memories of trails or mountains around here? Were you outdoorsy at all when you were younger?
It's funny. I was just looking at some old pictures with my brother of so my grandma, Nana was the one who, she'd just show up to the house, be like, all right, come on, we're going XYZ, we're gonna go on an adventure. And she was the one who got us out into the parks and everything. So some of my earliest memories are probably Pyramid Mountain over in Montville area. Mm-hmm. And I remember we got horribly lost over there and ended up like trying to outrun a thunderstorm.
Oh, that sounds good for you and Nana.
Yeah, Nana, oh my God, she's such an incredible woman. And she's in her 80s now, but she's super, super active her whole life. So she was always the one who's taken, Niagara Falls or down to North Carolina. And she actually really doesn't like the woods. That's what she always says. I don't like the woods or camping. I don't know why people like it.
Uh-huh.
But I think she saw the value of getting out in nature, which I'm incredibly thankful for.
Well, it sounds like she's still doing well at that age and still active. That bodes well for all of us, I think. That all of us that are out there running and hiking, right? So you said you got into running after the team sports were over and after, after college and all that. So what was the catalyst of getting you into running?
It's a great question. I think it was kind of looking to fill that big hole because I mean, athletics just took up such a huge part of my life and probably an identity thing as well. You know, you're an athlete for forever, and then that's not there anymore. So my older brother, who he still lives in Cincinnati, but he was there and he said, "Hey, we should run a half marathon together." And I was like, "What in the world? That is so far." You know, at that point, I think the most I'd run was probably we had like time trials with a mile or something with sports. So, but I don't know, I got nothing, nothing better to try out. So, ended up training for that half marathon, and it was all road.
Hmm.
My brother, I still hold it over his head. He bailed on the half like a week before, but
Is that right?
I ended up still running it, and then I was totally hooked after that. It was such a positive experience.
Nice. And where was that at?
That was in Cincinnati. It's the Flying Pig half
Flying
marathon
pig.
and marathon. Yeah.
Nice. And so that got you going in your running career.
Yeah, I did. And I mean, you've listened to the podcast, so I have the line, it's I'm all in personality. So it was just kind of like I had such a great experience with the half marathon. I was like, well, you gotta do more, run more. So the next one was the full marathon, which is also a road race. And then I met some trail runners, and that's when I kind of went over to the dark side, so to speak, because they use the logic. Well, a 50K is only a few miles longer than a marathon. You should just do a 50K. So I did the 50K, and then you do a 50 miler after that, and so it was a slippery slope.
So you began to progress after that.
Yeah, yeah.
So when did you come back to our area after leaving Ohio?
It was about 2016 I came back. So uh, pretty much because of the lifestyle coaching was really crazy, just a little bit of burnout from that. So I moved back to Jersey, and yeah, that was 2016. And that's when I really got plugged into the local trail community up
Hmm.
here in North Jersey, and that's when kind of my running experience started to shift a bit because up to that point it was just I was doing solo stuff and going to races by myself and you know just jetting out quickly afterwards. But once I moved back to Jersey and met local trail runners, that's when things started to change a bit.
So you started to meet people, and so I guess you got to explore all the trails around here. Then once you got back, you were probably kind of more ready to do that, right?
Oh man, it was like a whole new world. I mean, I think growing up in Jersey, we really didn't do too many trails. I mean, Pyramid Mountain and local, county parks and stuff. But
Hmm.
uh, once I had gotten into trail running and then I came back to Jersey and I remember when I first found the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference website, I was like, oh my God, there's this search engine. You can do the filters and you can, then as I grew as a trail runner, you find things like Gaia and All Trails and the more you get involved in the community, you talk to people and get
Hmm.
recommendations on trails. So um I mean I was going out like every weekend possible, just trying to explore new places. And uh, there's so many. I mean, I feel like I still haven't even scratched the surface of Jersey, New York, tri-state area.
There's just so much around. That's the thing. People are always asking me like, when do I want to travel out west? And I've been to a few other states and things, but I'm like, there's just so much to do over here. I don't really have to go anywhere. I could keep it pretty cost efficient nearby.
Totally. It's extremely underrated, I would say, the trail running scene and hiking scene.
Absolutely. Have you ever seen that thing? I've seen it on Facebook or Instagram a couple times where it's like a geographical map of America. And you see all those big mountains on the West Coast, and you see that strip up which runs right through our area. And it just makes me so happy that I don't live a little further west in the middle there where there's no mountains to climb. It's like such a
Oh,
big difference.
totally. Yeah, I mean that was Ohio. I mean they had some trails, but it was really not hilly at all.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
No mountains.
It must have been so nice to be able to have the variety once you got back over here.
Totally. Yeah, totally.
So now I was really interested when we talked briefly on the phone about a month ago or so, we were talking about what I do for a living, and I asked, "What do you do for a living?" And you said the race directing, like very matter of factly, and I was so inspired by that, and just impressed with the fact that you were able to kind of go all, like you said, you're all in personality, all in with Sassquad, and I share a similar experience. Proactive and Sassquad, are two different trajectories. But I also was a hotel manager for a decade and cut it off completely to pursue Proactive. And I just remember all like the emotions and the thoughts and the considerations and the apprehensions that I had kind of getting to that point. And I just wanted to kind of ask you, in the months and weeks leading up to knowing you were going to be leaving your regular job, to start something of your own, which I love. What was going through your mind kind of as you progressed to that period?
Wow, Joe, that's a great question. Well, it was definitely years in the making because when I moved back to Jersey, I took a job at a rehab therapy hospital, Kessler, over in West Orange, and I was just doing administrative work. So I was on, it was like a 9 to 5 Excel spreadsheets under fluorescent lights. It was perfect for the time because I was coming out of just like a crazy season of life, and to be able to kind of just go to a job where it was you go to work, you do the job, and you leave. It was great. Um, until it was like, oh my God, I cannot do this. I don't know how people do these jobs for like 30, 40 years. Props to folks who do that, but I was not built for the fluorescent lights and sitting all day. So yeah, I mean, really, once we got that first race, which was a fat ass, that was in 2018, and just hearing the really positive feedback from the trail running community, and folks were like, you should put on more events. It'd be great to have more races in the tri-state area. And just kind of figuring out like, I think it might be possible to do this as a career, and having those conversations with friends of trying to figure out like, what would it take to make that shift? And I knew like it would not be a smart decision to just like quit my job and say I'm doing Sassquad full time. So it was like a progression over. I mean, that was 2018, and I think I eventually left that job in 2020 or so. So I went from working full time, and then I dropped to part time, and then at some point I was also per diem, which was a cool, very flexible way to do things. But then it kind of got to that point, which I think you experienced this too, where it's like, I need to make the jump because I can't keep doing both. But it's a really scary position to be in because when you leave a job, that means it's so many things, insurance and just consistency and all that. But that's eventually what I did in 2018 and excuse me, in 2020. And yeah, it was great. I mean, it was an awesome leap to make, but definitely years in the making.
Uh-huh. I'm very impressed when anybody has the guts. Once you leave that weekly paycheck, it's then you have to really start making it up. You have to start making something happen right then and there. It's all on you, to make it happen at that point.
The whole self-employed lifestyle is, I would say like, if you don't do the work, nobody else is doing it. So, and I think especially being in the events world, it is like there is definitely a certain amount of risk that's involved because, the revenue comes from people signing up for your events. So it was interesting the timing of leaving the full-time job. And I apologize, the cat is here.
All added color.
Oh my goodness. Hopefully she'll go back to sleep soon. Oh wow. You're so dramatic.
She's telling her side of the story, right?
I know. She's like, don't forget me. I was involved. The support cat. But yeah, 2020 was when I left my full-time job. It was actually right before the pandemic like opened up.
Yep.
And I remember like that month or two into it was probably, I guess that was like March, April or so. It was really scary because like I had left my job, I had just bought an enclosed trailer for the business and like was all in on the race schedule. And then all of a sudden like everything's canceled, but trail running community, like many other communities, very resourceful and kind of creative, where everybody jumped into the whole virtual races. And so that's what kind of it actually, I always like, I look back and think like that's actually what made Sassquad kind of turn a corner with people getting involved, because we were doing the virtual races, reaching people that we hadn't reached before. So yeah, I mean, yeah, everyone's got the pandemic story. That was
Oh
a
yeah,
crazy
definitely.
time. It still is. But yeah, for sure. I don't know. Did you have similar experience like when you were switching things up?
Definitely, because it was about that time. It was about that time where we just started to pick up a little momentum right before the pandemic. So like in January, I started having more people come out, and it was starting to grow a little bit. And in March, I actually just came back to the film industry in January too. So I picked up the extra work, and I was like, I can cram all this in because this is all beneficial. So all this stuff together was kind of gaining momentum. And then in March, boom, everything just kind of dropped out from beneath us. So we did some like, we closed down all of our public promoted hikes and all that, and we just did things off the radar. But then in July, when we kind of felt comfortable starting to bring groups out again, I think it was in like mid-July, we had more people through the rest of that year than I had ever seen again. Like every hike was packed, and more people were asking how they can get out, when they can get out. So it was a really busy time actually, which is kind of funny when people ask about how 2020 went. I'm like, I thought it was a pretty good year aside from all the bad stuff that was going on around us.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, the hiking scene exploded in 2020. I mean, anybody who was involved in trails knows there was kind of a before and after of just a really big change in the public use of parks. Which, there were growing pains with that for sure. But overall, I think it's been a really cool thing to watch. Just so many people, so many more people getting involved and kind of, I mean, it's kind of like each of our experiences, right? Like once you find the trails, it opens up this whole new world. And I mean, I'm sure you have too, like just met so many amazing people through the trails. It's been really, really cool.
It's amazing how many people I've met. It's almost my entire circle grew by maybe 10 or 20 times, I feel like. And the majority of those people are all people I've met out through social media, which is also amazing, through social media and then onto the trails. So it's something I would have never expected when I signed up for Instagram that first time, that I was going to make some of my closest friends and most interesting people I'd meet would be from Instagram.
Oh, totally. Yeah, that's a whole nother beast, social media.
You know how it is when you run. I'm sure you've had the experience where you meet somebody and they're like, "Oh, my name is at symbol whatever," and,
Yes.
and that's how you'll know who they are.
I have a couple of questions about particular races because
The Squatchy Surprise
Oh man, yeah.
really intrigues me. Can you
It's
just
a wild
elaborate
one.
on what that is and where the inspiration for that came from?
Yeah, that is such a wild, fun event. It's I mean, I know people have a really fun time participating, but it's really fun to race direct and to watch. Because I mean, someone could be out there for 12 hours and every time they pull a golf ball, there's still the same like excitement, like, yes, I got the color I wanted, or dread of like, oh no, I pulled the whatever golf ball. But yeah, that event was inspired by a race that's out in Colorado. I'm actually not sure if it's still going on or not, but it's called the Tommy Knocker Ultra. They had a few kind of things that were different, so we put a little Sasquatch twist on it. One of which was, I believe, one of their rules was if you didn't finish your last loop before the timer ended, none of your miles counted. You would like go bankrupt essentially. So that's just like I don't have the heart to do that to somebody. So we got rid of that rule. But yeah, I mean the basic premise is that there's 4 different color trail loops that vary in distance, and there's a bucket of golf balls that are different colors. So the colors correspond to the trail loops. So before every loop, each runner and hiker will reach into the bucket, and whatever color golf ball they pull out is the loop that they're going to go run. And it's a timed event, so people can sign up to do 3, 6, or 12 hours. But it's great. Like most of the other Sassquad races, we have so many hikers come out, which is really cool. That's kind of the beauty of having a timed event or really generous cutoffs. But yeah, the surprise is a really fun event.
Yeah, I just like anything where you can kind of have different, so many different renditions of the same sort of trail system, and you have. I really want to check it out to see how people take picking out the golf ball if they've gotten more miles than they want to run, and they know that they have to kind of take on a little extra. Or some, I'm sure there's plenty that don't get enough miles and they wish they got more. Probably right.
Yeah, it's a hoot. It is really, really fun to watch. And there's little, there's a bit of strategery involved, I would say. Like we have there's also a black golf ball. So the black golf ball is runner's choice. So if you pick the black, you get to choose which one you want to do. We also offer a mulligan. So you can make a donation to our charity partner, Bigger Than the Trail, and then you can draw again. But the really fun part is at the end of the race when there's 1 hour left, everyone has to decide if they're going to keep drawing golf balls in the final hour or if they're going to wait until there's 30 minutes left and then they go up and do this half-mile mini loop as many times as they can. So it is a bit of strategy of like, do you roll the dice and keep drawing golf balls or, are you going to go and pound out some half-mile loops? But yeah, I mean, I would say it's kind of like controlled chaos, that event,
Like
because like everyone's literally doing a different race, but it's super fun.
That's awesome. I saw in another podcast you said that you would recommend if somebody was looking to sign up for one, the Wild Goose run, which is actually coming up. This year's rendition's coming up next weekend. Is that right?
Yes, the Wild Goose Trail Festival.
Now, why would that be the one that you would recommend?
Well, that event by far has our most generous cutoff times for each of the events. So, the 100-mile, the 36-hour, and the 100K and the 50-mile, they all have 36 hours to finish. So, like 36 hours to finish a 50-mile. Like you could literally like do some miles, sleep, and then get up and go again.
Yep.
So those events start on the Saturday, and then the Sunday events, we've got the 50K, which you have 12 hours to finish. And then we also offer a half marathon and a 10K, which you have 10 hours to finish. So it's a cool, the whole setup is very newbie friendly. There's one central aid station that you come back to after each loop. There's 3 different loops, and you do a variation of those loops in order to get the distance. So the aid station is like out of control. I mean, it's so extra, the aid station. It's a lot of fun. I've got a few buddies of mine. They're into like the 200-mile plus races. So they're the aid station captains and just really bring their A game for it. So it's a lot of fun. My buddy Matt, he's doing the aid station. He started smoking pork butts today. So just to like give you an idea of what's going down at the aid station.
That sounds like quite the aid station. And I can imagine if there's just one, it's got to be like a big time aid station.
Last year there was like funnel cake and French fries. At one point I'm like, are we at a county fair? What's going on?
That's a good aesthetic. If you're meeting that, that's a good aesthetic to have, like.
Yeah, you touched on something.
Because I do know that through Sassquad, you've raised funds for, some organizations like the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference, Stride for Stride, the South Mountain Conservancy. But bigger than the trails is something that you're passionate about. I know you advocate for mental health quite a lot from what I've heard through the other podcasts and through Sassquad. Do you want to talk a little bit about Bigger Than the Trail?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for bringing that up, Joe. Yeah, Bigger Than the Trail it's a nonprofit organization that provides cost-free therapy for anybody who needs it. So it's not limited to just runners or hikers. That's just the platform that they use to raise the funds. So it was through that organization that I first got plugged in with therapy a few years ago, and which really changed my life. So it's been something where I've just been trying to just get the word out. There's so many barriers for people to get involved with therapy, whether it's insurance or cost or travel. This is it's a great way to get started and to kind of remove those barriers of you sign up, there's no cost, it's virtual. So yeah, they're just doing really, really great work. So raising some funds for them is just a cool way to give back.
Very nice. We'll be sure to provide their information so that people could donate if they're interested in doing that for that organization and the others that you have, donated money to. One of the questions I wanted to ask you was, do you have a particular item any type of equipment that you would recommend for runners or hikers that you like, that you use?
Great question. Man. Well, if you're just getting into running, I would suggest, if you like it, if you do like running and hiking, trying out some trail shoes. It sounds super basic, but going, instead of sneakers, if you want to do more trails that are kind of technical or whatever, getting some trail shoes. But I don't know, in terms of like a personal preference for something I'd never go without, A and
This
B.
question has been hard for a lot of people when
I
I ask them.
know. I'm trying to think like what's always in my pack. Probably, I would say Garmin InReach, I think, has been a really good investment just for like doing mountain stuff or whatever. It's great peace of mind to have that with me. It's always in my pack. Even if I'm going out for a local run, I always stash it in there.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's just something you always have just to make sure you're safe and
Yeah.
can communicate.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And do you have a favorite trail snack?
A trail snack. One that's always reliable is a Pro Bar. Those are just like, they're hearty. They pack a lot of calories. They don't get super melty or like break your teeth in the winter. That's always like the balance. In the East Coast is the extreme weather. But yeah, I'd say probably Pro Bar is old reliable. But if you've got access to an aid station, love pierogies. Pierogies are always good.
I keep hearing pierogies. Pierogies keeps coming up as one of the snacks that people like to bring on these
So
trails.
good.
I
So
got to try. I
good.
still haven't brought pierogies of my own. I'm gonna have to try that soon.
Yeah.
I do love that you mentioned the breaking your teeth thing. Because the first time I ever did the Devil's Path, it was in November. We were breaking trail for about the whole way in about like 8 or 10 inches of snow, and the guy I was with just kept pulling out RX bars like all night into
The night,
Awful.
and he kept handing them.
them to me. And as we got later and later in the day, it became just almost impossible to just even break into them. It would have to like chew a piece off of it for a while before I could eat.
It's funny that you say that because that's definitely like an East Coast problem, I think.
Yeah.
Now, do you happen to have a favorite movie or
Book about sort of based off of the trails or the outdoors or anything that you look to, movies or books?
I've got my bookshelf in here. Let me see. Um, the one on the top of it is called Fixing Your Feet. That's like the runner's Bible. That's always a good one. Let me see. The author Corey Reese. I don't know if you heard him. He's an ultra runner. He's put out quite a few books that focus. He's just super vulnerable in there, talking about mental health. So those have been helpful books for me to read. So I'd recommend those.
Corey Reese? Yeah, we're gonna put them out there. Corey Reese.
Yeah.
I like that. Now, what's your take on music on the trails? Do you listen to music or do you like the natural sounds of the outdoors?
That's a debate, right?
It is. It's controversial.
Oh man, it has changed for me recently. I moved up to North Jersey 2 years ago, and there are a lot of bears. So the bears are very active where I live, and so I almost always will play music out of my phone, no headphones, because that just helps the critters know that somebody's on the trail. So yeah, I will use music or podcasts I'll play from my phone to kind of let Yogi Bear know I'm around.
That's a good move. Do you have any particular, is there any, like, if you had to pick one song that you feel like motivates you or inspires you when you're on your runs the most, do you have a particular song that's your go-to?
Man.
These are tough questions. I'm asking the
Tough questions here.
I mean, a song I could listen to on repeat that will never get old is the artist John Butler, his song Ocean, which is it's an acoustic guitar solo that's like 12 minutes long, and it just kind of transports you to another world. So I like John Butler a lot. So yeah, I would say that song.
Love it. I'm going to add that to my playlist now. You have your own wood shop. that you make your own buckles and the medals and all that with. How did that come about?
Yeah, so the Squatch shop is what we call it affectionately. The Squatch shop came about probably around 2020 as well. When I first started doing Sassquad, I was actually doing everything by hand. So like literally painting slices of like the wood slices, the tree slices, and or hand burning them. And I quickly learned like that is not a sustainable way to like do things. So eventually found the whole world of laser engraving, which is a big machine that uses a laser to burn into the wood and cut the wood. So yeah, I mean, I just personally love the whole kind of aesthetic of wood medals and awards. And it was also a way that they gave a lot more flexibility as producing events to like, if you have a surge in numbers the week before, you're not really scrambling to like, oh, I have to go order more medals. Or it also cuts down on waste a lot because you're not ordering extra for that reason and then having a box full of medals afterwards. So yeah, and then in the pandemic it was one of those things where it just right time right place exploded, where I started putting the word out of like, are you running your own virtual race, your own DIY, which everybody was doing, order a medal or a buckle for to remember it by. And that kind of like it went nuts in 2020 and 21. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's cool. And making the buckles for the Wild Goose is just so fun. And that's just an awesome experience to see runners and hikers when they finish to pick the buckle and just know how much that means to each person. It's a cool thing.
They look awesome. I was watching those videos of you making them, and I just think they're great. They're really nice.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun to make.
So now I'm gonna ask you about some of your bigger, your better known hikes or runs, and I just want to give me a little piece of what you remember or something interesting from these particular hikes. Okay.
Okay.
So we'll start with some back in November
2020 when you did the 7 summits, which was 27 miles, 7,500 feet. What do you recall about that day?
It was so hard. Oh, but what a special route. And it's been so cool to see like how many people have gone out and done it now. I put it on the FKT site, and then it kind of just has been floating around in the local trail community. And one of my favorite stories is actually I was out on a hike in the Hudson Highlands, and I was chatting with a guy who was running, and I said, "Oh, what are you doing the route?" He's like, "Oh, have you heard of this thing called the 7 Summits?" I was like, "Yeah, I have heard of it." But yeah, that first day, the first time I did it, I mean, it was created. I was looking at a trail map for the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference, and they use stars to designate great viewpoints. And I literally, I took a highlighter and I just drew the route and connected all the stars. I was like, I wonder what that's going to be like. And then I went and did it. I was like, oh my God, this is so hard, but such a cool route. And I hope that it can eventually, connect back, because there's trails that are still, damaged from the storms last summer. But yeah, the 7 Summits is a good time.
Oh yeah. That's a lot like our Guardians of the Highlands hike, which we do every year. It includes some variation of that. So this year, I think they just opened up Bear Mountain again, maybe a few days after we actually ran a strange version of it this year, where we kind of went around and just kind of skipped what we couldn't get to. But it's a great hike. When you did that hike, was that at that time, was that one of your longer hikes, or had you already done bigger things by that point?
It was September. Wait, no. That was right after I did the first 100. So yeah, I was coming off of the 100. That was also a DIY over at the Watchung Reservation, Union County. And so I think that was in September. So I'd taken some time off, and then I was like, oh, I want to do more. And so that's when I kind of was starting to explore more mountain stuff in the area.
So the 7 Summits was in 2020, and I was interested in this one a lot. The Wanamaker Traverse in March of 2021, which was 36 miles and 8,200 feet. Because we do another hike that's sort of all throughout those mountains, but yours is about maybe 7 to 10 miles longer. So I just wanted to know, how did that go for you?
That was super dumb.
Please elaborate.
Again, it was one of those things where I had the map out, I connected the stars, and I wanted to see if it was possible to make a complete loop in the Ringwood, kind of the Highlands of Jersey, because there are some tough trails in the Highlands there, just very, very rugged. The Stonetown Circular is one of them. I know you guys go out on Stonetown. That is just a beatdown. It really is. Like, I don't know if there's any flat part of that, but yeah, it was. I just had the maps out and again took a marker and made the circle. I was like, oh, this should be interesting. And then went out with a couple friends after reconning the sections to make sure we could connect it. And wow, it was really it was really tough. I've had some friends who have gone out and done it since or attempted it and just like, yeah, that's super dumb.
I find like those trails in Ringwood and that whole area, there's a lot more, kind of cutoffs on the trails. There's a lot of like little side trails, and it's one of those ones that you really have to kind of be paying attention to the map to make sure you're staying on track, or you can go way off.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. And especially, I mean, depending on the time of year as well, like it's really easy to get off on a trail spur.
Now, here's a big one. In September 2021, it was the Hudson Highlands Hundo.
You've said a lot about that already. Is there anything that maybe you haven't shared yet that you could put out there, or just what's the first thing that comes to mind, you know?
You've talked to Justin Lewandowski about it extensively, and
Yes.
I will never forget when he finished looking at his eyes and just it's like you look at and he has seen some shit. Like remember he finished, he was like, Kim, that was I don't even think he had words when he finished. He was like, that was insane. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. But yeah, oh my God, that one too. It was I had the maps out and I wanted to connect all of the stars on the map. And I thought it'd be really cool to do a big loop of like the East Hudson and the West Hudson. And it's like we could connect it with the Newburgh Bridge and the Bear Mountain Bridge. And it came out to be almost 100 miles over, I don't even remember, 22,000 feet of climbing. And so I ended up, that's what I did. I was supposed to do Tahoe 200 in place of that, but the race had gotten postponed due to the fire. So I had all that training and wanted to do something. And so I put together that event, quote unquote. And it was originally called the Hudson Highlands, no, the Hudson Valley Traverse, the HVT. And then mile like 80 something, I was out of my mind delirious and proclaimed like, this is now the Hudson Highlands, hell no, hellhole, hundo. And I remember submitting it to the FKT site and my friend Ryan Thorpe was like, they're never going to approve that name. I was like, well, I could always try. And then they published it. I was like, oh my God, they published that name.
I love it.
Oh my God. Yeah. So there's been a couple of folks who have finished so far and it is just, it's a wild ride. That's what I'd say about that route. It is a wild ride.
It sounds like it. That speaking of Justin, I know the pictures I saw of him mostly are him of laying on the ground afterward because he was getting comfortable on the pavement afterward. So it definitely beat him up a little bit.
And the funny thing about that hike is that any of those particular mountains, people will do. If they do any particular mountain, it's a big deal. Like if you do all of Storm King, that's a big deal. If you do all of Black Rock Forest, it's a big deal. And to go through all of that and combine it all together, it can be nothing short of a wild ride.
Yeah, it was crazy. There's a picture of Justin on the summit of Bear Mountain by the Perkins Memorial Tower. And I mean, he's trashed, absolutely trashed. Because at that point you've got like a couple miles left. And there's a picture, I have a picture my friend took of me at the Bear Mountain summit, the same spot. And Justin and I put them together side by side. It is so, I mean, I have like, my eyes are bloodshot because I was crying because it was like, because at that moment, and Justin agreed, like that moment, like we did it. Like it's just such a crazy experience to be at the top of Bear Mountain and know like all you got to do is get to the bottom. And there's just the whole ride up into that point. I know for both of us was was wild. So yeah, the picture is ridiculous at the summit of Bear Mountain.
So now you mentioned the Tahoe 200 was postponed, so you did the Hudson Highlands Hundo. So then later on in June 2022, you went on to do the Tahoe 200, which is 204 miles and 33,000 plus feet. Tahoe is very important to you. I know you brought that up quite a bit throughout some of the other podcasts. What can you tell me about the Tahoe 200?
Yeah, the Tahoe 200, I mean, it's really far for one. Sounds like a dumb statement to make, but yeah, it was a really special experience. I mean, all the really big efforts that I've done have been just a really cool community experience. So I've had a lot of close friends who have come out to help and support. And each of them, like, I mean, you have the actual event that is really cool, but it's so much about the journey that leads up to it. And for Tahoe in particular, that was around the time that I got involved with Bigger Than the Trail and started getting involved with therapy. And so it was just a really, it was a hard season of life leading up to Tahoe, but then to finally get help and the resources that I needed, and then to see like, wow, I can share this with other people too, and see other people have their lives changed through getting help, was a really, really powerful experience. And Tahoe was, you know, I raised funds for Bigger Than the Trail with doing that race. So just kind of experiencing like, you know, there's running, it's so much more to running than just running. Like running can be such a powerful vehicle and tool to help people. So that was kind of like Tahoe really opened the door to that whole experience. And yeah, it was special. It was like, I mean, so much happens over the course of 100 hours. You're just totally like stripped raw, I think. And I think that's why a lot of people like keep coming back to endurance, in particular, like the multi-day events, because you're just so, I don't know, you're in this mindset that like you really can't achieve anywhere else. I suppose maybe if you're on like mushrooms, I've heard that experience is pretty similar. Seriously,
I can see that.
I've talked to a friend who like did one of those ayahuasca retreat things, and she was like, your Tahoe experience sounds very similar to what I experienced on ayahuasca. She's like, but you were in a lot more pain than I was.
That's true.
You know. But yeah, I mean, I think just in a lot of ways, Tahoe 200 was kind of a turning point in my life for a variety of different reasons. But yeah, it was incredibly special, the experience.
And that led you into, I know you've talked about this a lot lately, but your FKT of the Long Path, which you did in July of last year, 2023, 358 miles and 68,000 plus feet. Amazing. Congratulations. I know I've said that to you before on that amazing achievement. And so is there anything that you could possibly tell me about the Long Path that you haven't already told anybody else?
Oh man, well thank you first of all. Yeah, the Long Path, it's a interesting thing because now we're like a year and several months from the experience, and it's still affecting my life. Like there's still, I feel like every conversation I have, probably this one today, I'm still learning from the experience, and things will come up where, you know, I'm just drawing back on the experience that I had out on the Long Path, whether that's like thoughts that have been processing over the last year and a half or so, whatever it might be. There's a documentary coming out about the Long Path, and there's a 5-minute trailer that Shai Ben-Dor, the filmmaker, he showed me, and I was crying within 15 seconds, probably. Even just thinking about it, I'm probably gonna get emotional. But the film, it focuses on mental health, and again, it kind of just comes back to like we do these like crazy dumb things, but to be able to see the impact that it can have on other people is really, really powerful. So Shy is just, he's creating something that's like really, really special. And it's just gonna be cool to see, I think, like the ripple effect of that. And, we're getting a therapist involved and going to be putting out some resources for people. But just to be able to see like that crazy, dumb 9.5 day journey, like it can make a lasting impact on other people. So, yeah, it was wild, Joe. It was a wild ride. It's crazy. Like I still get emotional about it. And it's like a year and a half later.
I'm sure. I mean, you know, through that you've inspired so many people to do so many different things. And even if it's somebody who's not going to do something like the long path, you might just be pushing somebody to go from, 5 to 10 to 20 miles to generally take care of themselves, or just to feel like they can achieve something as wild as what you did, and that's a great thing.
Yeah, I think that you really nailed it there. I think that's really been something that's been so special about um, my running journey, but also race directing, is like I get to have those conversations that you just said every race at the finish line. That's really one of my favorite parts of race directing, is hearing stories from people. Like you said, like, someone might share, I'm here today doing my first 5K because, I heard your story, or I heard somebody else's story on the podcast or whatever. I got involved in the community and it totally changed my life getting involved in running and hiking. But especially like the mental health stories of people saying like, I had no idea I could get help in a way that's, accessible, and, it's changed my life. And I think that is just it's so cool. It's so cool to see that and hear those stories.
For sure. I think it was really cool that I was able to incorporate Sassquad Trail Running into the proactive challenges here, where people can sign up for any of your races throughout this next season and gain points in the proactive challenge, because a few people that I know very certainly would have never run an organized race have already signed up for some of your races. And it excites me to no end to see if this propels them into more or, bigger races going forward. So even that alone is a perfect example of where you've inspired
Oh,
people.
I love it. Yeah, I'm so glad you came up with that idea to we're offering a little discount and getting people involved. And it is true. I think, sometimes it just takes one little push for people to dip their toes in, and then they're like, wow, I really like this. Or, perfect eyes, some people come and they're like, I love the bacon. I'm coming back for the bacon, something like that. And who cares? Who cares what your motivation, your reason is for getting out and active? I love your group because it's accessible. Like so many different people can come, and I think that's really what it's all about. It's easy to get caught up in like, the elites or FKTs or big races or stuff like that. But like most of us are just like, we're going out to relieve stress or spend time with friends or solitude or just experience nature and beauty around us. So yeah, I think, what you're doing is really cool. Like you're exposing people to really incredible places that they probably would never have heard about, or been able to access. So I don't know. It's cool, Joe. That's what it's all about. It's cool to see.
Hey, I appreciate that, Kim. I think, in that way we're, peas in a pod. Definitely in this outdoor community of ours. Now, I appreciate you being here today. Is there anything else you want to share before we end it up?
Well, I do apologize for the cat once again, and to your listeners who are hearing high pitched meowing throughout this whole thing. But no, yeah, it's been awesome. I've been looking forward to this. I know we've been planning it for a couple of months, so it's great to finally chat and have a longer extended conversation. And again, I just love everything that you're doing and for the trail community and growing it, and just providing a safe space for people to come out and enjoy the trails. It's really cool.
Thanks, Kim. Mutual Admiration Society. So likewise. Take care, Kim. I'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, we'll see you. Bye.
Bye.
Well, I'm so glad after quite a while of planning that out that I finally got to speak with Kim. You can find Kim Levinsky at Kim Levinsky on Instagram and at Sassquad Trail Running on Instagram as well, sassquadtrailrunning.com. You can find us at Proactive AHW on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and X. I'm Joe. That's Jarod. And that's it. You can support Bigger Than the Trail at the link below and other charities that Sassquad Trail Running has donated to. You can find that information in the link below.